hope everybody is doing well. I am Sonam and I'm back with another new episode. And this time I have one of the very familiar faces as my guest today. Hi, Ashwarya. How are you doing?
Hi Sonam. Glad to be here.
Could you introduce yourself? Because you do a lot of different
Yeah,
things, so I would let you take that take on that.
yeah, absolutely. My full-time role is with Microsoft. I'm a senior AI advisor for Microsoft for startups. So my day-to-day is advising startups and helping them build and optimize their tech stack. I'm based out of San Francisco, so that's typically my startup portfolio that I'm advising. I have always been like very curious and interested in working with startups in different capacities. So I'm also working as an angel investor with Hustle Funds. So if there are any interesting startups watching this, definitely share your pitch deck with me. I'll be happy to like see how we can collaborate. Outside of that, I'm interested in the data science and AI space in general, and I feel it's really important to share all the knowledge that's there in the space with everybody, not just people who are like practitioners in data science. It needs to be something which is available for everyone who's starting off, so they don't feel the imposter syndrome or they don't feel that it's an unachievable field or it's too crowded and things like that. So I'm creating a lot of content, training materials, blog posts, etc. through LinkedIn and Substack as well now. I'm like shifted my long form content into Substack, so that's where I'm like sharing most of the technical resources and like learning parts and everything, so that people can learn wherever they are at. If there are people who are trying to move from a different field into data science, what are the skills that they need? How can they prepare themselves to be in this field and be successful in the field?
Wow, that was a mouthful. Thank you. But I'm sure people will be interested to learn all of that. And that's why I invited you on my podcast, especially to talk about data science. And I mean, data science has been around over decades now, and we have seen plenty of evolution in this field and AI in general. And, there have been so many variations of what a data scientist is or what they should or are meant to do in any company. However, with the recent growth in AI and generative AI, so to speak, I would love to know with your thoughts on, is it worth for people to pursue data science for their career?
I would absolutely say yes, because I would like to compare this with probably say like 20, 30 years ago when software engineering became a very exclusive thing, right? Like at that point in time, if you could code, then it
Hmm.
meant that, oh, you're like, one of the elite, top class, or like smartest people out there. But now software engineering is pretty much everywhere, be it like anything that's digitized, be it a marketplace, be it a retail space, be it I don't know, supply chain, everywhere, right? Like it's pretty much there everywhere. Even a person selling furniture online has to have a team of software engineers building their website, keeping track of the website, making sure that the load is balanced across like website traffic, etc. So software engineer is pretty much embedded in every single thing,
Yeah.
unless and until you're a coffee shop who has no website, who has no digital presence and like there in a nook. So similarly, data science is moving in that direction. I wouldn't say we are there yet. It's not the same level of maturity with software engineering, but
Hmm.
with data science, the thing that we are realizing over the years is that we have accumulated a lot of data, right? That's needless to say. We have accumulated a lot of data. Not all of the data that we have accumulated is going to be of business value.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that everything that you've accumulated is going to give you some return, but there is still a plenty of that section which can be used for various applications, and that is where the data science component comes into picture.
Hmm.
Data science doesn't necessarily have to be machine learning. Not everything has to be solved with machine learning. Even basic models and algorithms and statistics can help you do that. But having access and visibility into the data set, and that's the democratization part that I keep talking about in my posts as well. It's very important that everybody in the company, everybody who's remotely going to use the data or can use the data, has access to that data.
Right.
And it is still a challenge. I've worked with big tech companies, and getting access to that data is not as simple as somebody might think it is.
Yeah.
It's divided in so many siloed tables in different sources, owned by different teams. So it's extremely difficult to even get that together in the right place. So
Hmm.
that's where I feel data science is going to stay for as long as digital experiences exist. Um, so now the second part that you spoke about is with generative AI, right? Again, generative AI is the new wave of
Yeah.
how machine learning can be used for different purposes.
Hmm.
Earlier, machine learning models were more in the predictive analytics space, and then it became into prescriptive analytics space, and then recommendation systems or personalization. So it's just moving into different directions and capturing different use cases both vertically and horizontally. That's where generative AI is also moving. We are just exploring new use cases and new capabilities of machine learning models. This is
Hmm.
not this is not different, that AI is different and generative AI is different. I oftentimes see people using that as two different things, but it is one and the same thing. It's just a different flavor of the same set of models. So yeah, this data science and AI space is going to evolve.
Hmm.
The roles, responsibilities that people have been taking up so far is going to evolve because of a new set of softwares that have come out. So, and this is not going to be the same probably 10 years from now, right? Like if you ask somebody who started their career 10 years ago, the set of toolkits and the programming languages and the tech stack that they were using is not the same today. So this is going to be an ever changing thing that you have to keep adapting to the new softwares, new programming languages, and how toolkits change over the period of time.
Yeah, I mean, we see that every day the new tools coming up. It's already very hard to keep up. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. It's an ever-changing field, and you gotta just stay in the loop to keep yourself updated. That totally makes sense. So, speaking of like, statistics and programming, do you believe it is still quite essential for anybody interested in building a data science career to know the basics, whether it's statistics, programming, data analysis, ML basics, and so on? And I just ask because all of this information, and especially with the generative AI tools like ChatGPT, you can get all this information in one query, almost one query. So I'm just curious, like how essential is it for anybody who's building their career in data science?
So the way I see using AI, the example that you gave, right? Like you can use ChatGPT to get answers to a lot of questions. There's two parts to it. One is reusing the knowledge that exists, and the
Hmm.
second part is innovation and creativity. ChatGPT, for however powerful it is still dependent entirely on the existing knowledge base. People say it's creative. Sure, it's creative within the space or the boundaries that we have given to it.
Hmm.
It's not going to be creative in the same way that a human is, where we are creating our new boundaries every single day. That's the major difference why knowing basics is important, because it's like asking, do a kid still need to go to school to learn alphabets and like math and numbers, right? Yes, you do need to have those foundations to even think about putting like your thought processes together or build something out of it. So if there has to be a future where people are still innovating, where people are still moving the needle in research, it
Hmm.
cannot be done relying on tools like ChatGPT, because it's going to still give you the answer that exists in the current world. It is not going to give you something that can possibly happen in the future. So for people to build something that is going to happen in the future, they need to know the foundations and fundamentals of what they are building. They need to understand the bottlenecks of it. They need to understand how each and every gear of the system works.
Hmm.
Only then they'll be able to build something on top of it that is innovative. So anybody thinking that, hey, to be a ML engineer or to be a data scientist, do I need to still go through like statistics and probability? Yes, absolutely. It is like the basic breathing
Yeah,
mechanism of the entire
yeah.
system. So yes, you do need to do that.
Yeah, it's at the core. Yeah, and I feel like these days people are just jumping onto this AI hype boat, but
Yeah.
forgetting that they still need to go back to the foundation, to those basics to actually fully
Yeah.
understand what this hype is about. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. So speaking of data scientists, Do companies still need data scientists? What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. There are more roles coming out, but that does not
Hmm.
mean that data science role is not available in the market. They are still very much there. It is just additional roles which are opening up for
Right.
people who are like very specialized in certain space. For
Hmm.
example, large language models, or in like prompt engineering space, or in like fine tuning section, or model containerization. All of these things are just specializations which are being added on top of what roles are existing. So data scientist is still going to be there. It's not something that it might evolve. That's what I'm saying. It
Mm.
might evolve with the kind of toolkits that you're using, with the tech stack that you're using, but it is still going to very much be there.
So, to follow up on that, do you think companies know what they want when they say they want to hire a data scientist?
The job description differs a lot in different
Hmm.
companies, in different teams itself. I have seen companies hiring for AI engineers, ML engineers, even like I've even seen like software engineering, machine learning, data scientist, applied researcher, applied data
Like
scientist. There's
scientists,
like so
yeah.
many variations of the same thing. Like Microsoft has applied scientist roles, which essentially means it's a data science role. So it's
Got it.
just different variations of the same thing. And certain companies also like define their specialization. So they say that they want a
Mm.
data scientist for financial planning. They want data scientists for personalization. They want data scientists for certain kinds of, say, like I don't know, like certain different product analytics, for example, right? So
Hmm.
they're like defined specializations for these roles, but the role description can slightly vary.
Right.
Some companies call data scientists as researchers who are working on the core algorithms. Some companies call data scientists as people who are applying these algorithms to solve certain problems. Some companies call data scientists as people who are taking data and like using that to change the product, how the product operates, or how the product features are being designed. So these are all like the same skill set, but just
More
you're using
specialized.
a different, yeah, you're just using a different variation of the same skill set in different roles. uh,
Mm.
I personally like the word data scientist to be somebody who's like in the applied side. Like I like the word like applied scientist and data scientist to be somebody who's
Yeah.
like on the application side of it, versus
Hmm.
researchers are the ones who are like building the core technology. So when you're applying for any particular role, I think this is what I recommend everybody: just read through the description
Yeah.
properly, reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and ask them that, hey, I see that this role is open at your company, like can you help me understand what does the day to day look like,
Right.
what are the tools that I'm going to work on, what are the responsibilities, what are the things that I'm going to be responsible for. So having that clarity, or like being proactive about knowing what you're getting into, is equally important from a candidate's perspective.
Fair enough. So, when it comes to hiring, do you see a difference in data science career building and hiring in India versus USA?
I can't really speak much from India's perspective because I've been out for like seven years now, and haven't had a chance to like dig deeper into how the market is growing there. But as far as what I'm hearing from people, and especially
Hmm.
people who are moving back, or people who have graduated recently and like moving into different careers, I hear that there are still a lot of roles opening up in India purely
Hmm.
because of the market that's available. It's over a billion people. So, any company being built in anywhere in the world, if they need massive users, India
Hmm.
is going to be one of their biggest markets. So,
Right.
because of that pure number game, it's a very very hyper growth market. There are a lot of startups which are coming out in India. There's a lot of companies which are headquartered elsewhere and like growing in India, so they need people to operate, right? And India by far has one of the best engineering talents out there. So
No doubt.
that's the reason I feel that there's obviously like a lot of roles that have opened up. The other challenge, like if I'm being very honest, has been because of the capital crunch. So for one person that's being hired in the US, especially in Bay Area, there's probably like three or four people who can be hired in India. So that's one of the reasons why I there might be a case that there are like more job roles opened up in India compared to the US.
Got it. Okay. Capital crunch. I didn't think from that perspective, but yeah, that's a good point of view to consider, especially if people are moving back or looking for a job in India
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
United States.
I mean, to be honest, like, especially I'm just talking from like maybe a couple of data points, but the people that I know have very recently moved back to India,
Mm-hmm.
they are making anywhere between like 150 to 200K,
Mm-hmm.
which is really really good
Yeah.
money in India compared to when you're looking at from like a purchasing power parity. It's really good. You'll probably be more upper middle class in India than what you'll be in Bay Area with the same amount of money.
Yeah, no doubt. Bay Area lifestyle is a whole different aspect to consider.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to leave the conversation with one last question, and
Yep.
this is like, what was the biggest challenge for you when you built your data science career, and how did you overcome that?
The biggest challenge for me was when I started my data science journey in India. The biggest challenge for me was to find resources and adequate guidance
Mm,
to help me through my research journey. At that point in time, I was more interested in academia and I was working towards that until I came to the US and I figured that I'm more interested in the applied side of things, and that is something that I have a natural knack at. So I switched between like research side of things to applied. But when I was in India, I felt like the biggest gap was knowing where my work is going, right? Like that was the biggest challenge because you felt that you are keeping on working towards something, but you don't know where's the end goal. There is no like end
right.
state of where you can go, and midway you can very well have to stop your research because there is no resource to support it, there's no capital to support it. So that is one of the biggest challenges that I felt. Back then I think even having enough compute systems was difficult because I
Oh
felt
yeah.
like my university was one of the only universities having cloud computing labs. So I had access to back then it was called IBM Bluemix. Bluemix was the cloud that they were hosting, and all the experiments that I had to do was like on that cloud. It was not a very accessible thing. Not a lot of people had access to cloud or what cloud analytics meant. But
Mm-hmm.
now I think that barrier to entry has decreased a lot.
Yeah.
Anybody can spin up a cloud today and get
Mm-hmm.
like at least like 300 to $500 in credits to run their experiments. There is a huge growth in open source community, which was again not the same back then. I remember scikit-learn was one of the open source packages. There were a bunch in R. SciPy was one. Stat models was the other one. So yeah, there were very limited open source toolkits that were available back then. And this isn't even like very old. I'm just thinking back in my brain that this was like what 2015, 2016, when I
Yeah.
was in my, that was not even like 10 years ago. So in that time it felt like I have moved like multiple decades, because now like everything, like I see, like I know at least 10 people around me who are working on an open source toolkit. So
Yeah.
that's how expansive the space has become. There's
Mm-hmm.
toolkits available to everybody. Like you can do anything and everything that you want to just with your laptop. So I think that power and the ability to make things accessible to people in the data science and AI space has really grown tremendously.
I think, yeah, I remember facing similar challenges when I was building it. It's like at the time, sentiment analysis was like such a top thing to do in NLP. And now it's like, yeah, one line of code and you have your sentiments analyzed.
No, yeah.
And I see like the projects people are building around now, especially like people who are in high school or, early career or engineering, they are building some really cool things and contributing to open source. And I'm like, I had no idea what the hell
Yeah.
open source meant back when I was doing engineering. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
the
Open
the
source was
growth is
Linux for me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, for me too.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, where we came from and where we are now and what people are doing with the resources and accessibility is mind blowing. But yeah, it's really cool to see that all these tools are becoming more and more accessible. And yeah, thanks a ton for sharing your experience and your, challenges and ideology. I'm sure many people are going to seek great benefit from our conversation and just, your journey itself. So yeah, thanks again for your time, Ashwarya. It was lovely talking to you again.
Thanks a lot, Sonam. And I'm
Yeah.
glad I was able to join this call and like we had such a nice discussion.